We'll call this special park board meeting to order here at 4:06 p.m. I'll start with a roll call.
All right, Miller.
Here.
Schaefer.
Here.
Roschmeyer. Scheib.
Here.
Jaeger. Right.
Approval of the agenda. Would one of you interested?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Item 4A, new business. Jesse and Paul.
Thank you, Andrew. So Paul and his team have been able to put together a set of about 60% plans. We took some of the comments that we received at the last meeting discussing this project. Got it to a point where we really want some park board input on really the plans all together, but specifically kind of identifying some of those view sheds we kind of discussed at the previous meeting. So included in here is some of the plans there, as well as some of what those photos look like for view sheds at a different project. And just really looking for comments. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Jesse, and members of the board. So I guess I'm going to start off here just with a quick schedule update. So as the weather starts kind of turning here in the fall, the plan is to still start construction here yet this fall. And so that means our timeline to get 100% plans done is kind of as follows. So our plan is to get plans finalized right around the end of September, which would be around that 9/26 date. We would go out for bids between 9:30 and 10:17. And so our hope is with these comments here tonight at a 60% level, it's kind of the point where any time we turn back after this point, it's going to really harm the schedule as far as we're past the point of no return after a 60% level. We're going through some permitting with the DNR right now for a public waters permit. We got to touch base tomorrow and I think meet with the area hydrologist out on site to talk over the project a little bit and make sure we're all on the same page there. Like I said, bidding window, we're hoping between 9:30 and 10:17 with bid opening on 10:17, and then we would prepare the bid tab 10:18, and then hopefully award the project or issue a letter of recommendation by October 19th. With that, I think we're going to have to come to the park board at that October meeting is what our plan was, with a recommendation to the park board for awarding bids. From that point, we would start construction and award the contractor the project. So it's a pretty tight window, but we have about 2 weeks here to finalize our plans based on any of your comments tonight and get a final cost estimate and then get those out on the street for bidding. So that's a quick overview of the schedule. As far as the plans are concerned, so Jesse has pulled up here the 60% draft. We also put in the packet the view shed plan from this is for the Mississippi Landing project. So when we had talked previously and we had some discussion internally about what the best areas to promote view sheds are, and we kind of came up with this 3-tiered system. So the red area being a very aggressive view shed plan given its narrowness, and it's on the curve of the river, so opening that up more to viewing when you're either on the road or on the trail, you'll be able to see further down the river. The yellow being a more intermediate view shed kind of area, which would include the removal of the invasive species like we're doing on the whole project, and opening up a couple of view sheds, not as intensive as the red area. And then the green area, given it's wide, it's very wide in that area, the floodplain is very wide, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity to access down there. That would just strictly be buckthorn removal, just opening up that area and getting it restabilized with native seed and live staking. So that is what we've come up with so far. I think Jesse kind of outlined a couple of things that we're looking for some guidance on. We're going to be working with city staff. So right now we've identified 135 container trees to be replanted in these areas. And we want to have city staff, I know they've been going through tree inventories here at the city and determining what type of trees to kind of diversify the tree population. So I know James and Jesse are going to be working on a list that we can incorporate into the drawings and specify that in the bid documents. This example is again what Luke was referring to last time at Valhalla Park. You'll see some of the bigger view shed areas and the big areas of blue. That would be the more intensive stuff. Some of the smaller ones would be like the intermediate areas where you could open up a small area to have more view shed. But we're thinking that the really heavy stuff is the stuff you see with the smaller areas of forestation, but then the other blue areas would be the areas where the view shed would be opened up, and that would be kind of that more intensive. So I guess any comments or feedback on that kind of 3-tiered plan, given kind of the location of where those are, and the size of the view sheds. If you guys have any comments related to that, we can incorporate anything in the drawings at this point.
No, I think it looks great. I mean, that's exactly how I would see it. And obviously, we're not going to be ripping up a lot of trees in the thicker areas and things like that. The cleanup was obviously the most important part, but getting a little bit more view in those lower visibility areas is massive. So I think the plans look great.
So the example you showed, is that like the dimension? So did it say like 10 feet or 4 feet, or how wide are these view sheds? Like when you're gonna say we're gonna see it? I mean, it looks great, but I'm just curious. Like, is it gonna be 2 feet we can see, or is that, so this is gonna be like 10 feet, or what does that management zone 10 mean?
So
That's
they delineated these all as management areas, which means that they reseed everything with native low shrubs and things to help keep the bank stabilized. But they call them management zones because they're basically trying to manage everything from growing up really heavy and tall, so you lose that visual. So you'll see in the pictures that are in the packet too what those management zones kind of look like. They're real low line, and then on the edges there's the tall tree still. Really, the areas, how wide you want them is really up to you, right? I mean, we can go on some of the maybe the intermediate areas where that yellow zone was. You can make them a little narrower, a little more, that you have to be standing directly in front of it to see out to the river. On the more intensive zone, you could open it up as wide as you want to get that view shed down the river, and leave, maybe 10 to 15 feet of the existing trees in those areas. And we would obviously replant with more container trees in those areas too. So it's really up to you.
We have to decide that today.
Yeah, I
how
mean,
many feet from like everything. So that'll be like in the bid, like we want view points of 4 feet in this red area, and then so we have to go that deep into detail.
I think just general concurrence with, I think we as WSB, and I think Jesse, if you would agree with this, if we agree to this kind of 3-tiered system, we can outline some areas, and we're going to have language in the plans that really identifies that they have to work with us and city staff when we're out in these areas and marking trees for removal or whatever that may be, that they're working with us, and also that for the replanting, we typically have or work with city staff out in the field on which trees to plant where and which the diversity of species and things at the planning level. We'll make sure that those are all included in the plan. So I think just general concurrence about this plan, the general intensity zones, and then if you have any other recommendations, like I would like to see this segment completely open, or I would prefer leaving the yellow area more forested rather than opening up more view sheds. I think that's really what we're looking for. Not specific dimensions, but general. Because you know what it looks like right now, right? It's this solid wall of green. You don't even know the river's there, so.
Brent, can you pull up some of the photos from the Valhalla Park? I think it might be easier to pull some of those photos and kind of, I don't know, Paul, if you can expand a little bit on kind of, this is like a 50-foot wood. view shed
They're
type
kind
of
of hard to
thing.
see because the pictures don't give you a lot of concept of scale. But you like those big blue ones, I would say yes, they're probably in that 50 to 100-foot range. But this is a long, long park that they're dealing with. And so like most of these are what you would consider if you go back to that view shed page with the blue. Most of these are going to be those bigger blue areas where they've cut out a large amount so you can see, and then they have the view. So if you scroll down a little more, Brent, I think if you see some of these, they left some trees way down because it's a big bluff here. They left some trees down lower because you can see over those. So they cleared away the trees that are directly in your line of sight, but then they left some lower. In this circumstance, out on the river here, you're not going to have that opportunity to leave trees down lower because your line of sight is pretty much at river level already. There's not a big terrain differential in those locations. But most of these, I think what the pictures are of those wider view shed areas. You don't see many of the narrow ones in these pictures, but like I said, the pictures aren't the greatest for showing perspective of scale from a distance.
You can't even see really the river in those, so. But obviously, these aren't our, this isn't our photos.
That one.
I guess that one, yeah, you can.
They were trying to get more at what has come back up. And that's,
Yeah.
the restoration after, so they can document what type of flora and fauna came back after the seeding and things, so. But, most of this, like I said, there's some smaller view shed areas, but most of that project was the big, wide viewing areas with treed kind of bookends on each end.
So the red areas that are more intense, it seems like there's a steeper grade there. Is there any work that can happen now to make kind of the maintenance of that easier in the future? Right, we want this to be, right, the red bit to be a really cleared view shed. There'd be more to maintain that.
I wouldn't think so, because most of the plants that are going back there are gonna be the plants that only grow this high, right? So unless there's volunteer trees and things coming back, those are the only things that are really going to inhibit. But if you get those established soon enough, that should prohibit any of those volunteer type of trees or box elders like to grow or things like that might come back. And so the hope is that you get rid of all the underbrush and then you have a maintenance plan in your contract. And that was also a discussion that we had is, we can include a 1-year maintenance. I don't know if Jesse, if you've had any time to think about what kind of after maintenance plan to have the contractor maintain this site for 1 year after construction, 2 years, and that way that takes some of the onus off of city staff to make sure that everything is coming back nice. If they have these volunteer trees coming in or buckthorn coming back, they go and take care of it, right? And so obviously a 2-year maintenance plan is going to cost a little more. I think there's room in the budget right now, so one of the things we were going to get to is the cost estimate. It was coming in right around that $215,000 mark. I think at our last discussions, there was about $350,000 in construction costs that. I think it was 350 plus the 100 for total. So I think we have quite a bit of room. If I remember our emails back and forth from the Lyman P. White Park, I'll verify that, but I think there is budget room to include that 2-year maintenance to help you guys out on that end and make sure that everything's established well and that the contractor is coming back and checking up on things.
Would that work with the LCCMR funds deadline?
So what I've heard and what cities typically do is they'll pay for those maintenance plans up front and then sign an agreement with the contractor that they're going to come back and honor that.
Cool.
Much like we do for projects that you're waiting restoration and you want to get the project closed out. A lot of times you'll sign an agreement with the contractor to say, hey, I'll come back and fix your grass if it doesn't grow or there's a bunch of weeds and I'll come back, pay me up front so you can get the funds distributed and then have an agreement in place that you can at least go back on if the contractor fails to perform.
Cool.
So yeah, so I think the couple things we wanted to talk about tonight were this obviously, and I think I'm hearing kind of general concurrence with that tiered approach and kind of using our judgment as far as the view sheds are concerned with the more intensive view sheds on the north end and get less intense as you move south. Opening it up kind of similar to this Valhalla Park project with some of the smaller view sheds in that yellow area. The cost estimate, you guys want to explore the 2-year kind of maintenance option, or maybe we can give you options for both and present those to city staff and see which one they're more comfortable with, dependent on what we have for a budget. And I'll circle back on that, Jesse, for what we have for LCCMR funds remaining. And then the cost estimate, like I said, it's coming in at that 215 number. That's going to change a little bit. When we met with Jesse, they like to have the 15-gallon trees over the ones we had specified. So those are going to get a little more expensive, I think. They tend to survive better too. So, and then, you know, there's of course discussions on, do you guys want, and we don't quite have a number solidified for how many trees that are going to get removed. I think it's going to be kind of dependent on what's out there and how many view sheds we clear out. But there's, you know, we have 135 container trees in there. I'm thinking that's probably going to be about a 1-to-1 replacement. You can always increase that too if you guys feel like you want to try to densen up those wooded areas a little more. But I think right now it's probably pretty close to a 1-to-1 tree replacement ratio, and it'll just get more dense in areas and less in others.
So can we kind of plan it so like looking across the river, and you guys maybe already thought of this, but like if there's less stuff across the river, even like we would have our view sheds kind of lined up so you could even see across. I mean, I don't know what you want to see over there, but you know, would that be part of the plan at all to kind of like be able to see further? Not sure what's over there, the college. But like, would there be any reason why we'd want to like make sure those are like?
That area would be like, what road is that back on 4th, that cul-de-sac road? Yeah, it's private property on the other side there. It's not Tyrol, but it's the other like loop road that comes off of
Not really
4th.
anything to look at. I'm just thinking like sunsets too. Like if there's like a cool spot.
Hawkins Drive, yeah, there you go. Yep.
Because the sunsets like further down by Kiwanis are, you can catch a really beautiful sunset.
I don't know, just given the topography, if you're going to be able to, because
It'll,
it's a big rise on the other side of the river,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
that's
it
why I
is.
was like, if there was like a spot, but I don't know. Selfishly, I like sunsets. I like, we have a perfect sunset spot in Brainerd. I know. I'm serious though.
I
but
suppose
yeah.
wherever you put the view shed, different parts of the year you'll get a better
Yeah, that's true too.
sunset. So
Yep.
some will be better in fall than they are in spring type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question about, I'm curious about the timing of the contract, like you mentioned at the beginning. So it sounds like you have a really great timeline. So then we like, but if someone signs on and they like need to start work, I mean, everyone has like projects they've already started. So is it like we need to be first? Because it sounds like we need to get going right away. So
That's up to the contractor too. So we'll specify in the contract that you can start given the notice to proceed. So we issue a letter that says that you're allowed to proceed, and we've reviewed the schedule with them prior. So they can start in the fall, and then the hope would be is that they get as far as they can in the fall with what is specified, and then start again in the spring if there's anything left, with the completion date being the end of the LCCMR funding deadline, which is, I think, July 1st of '24. So it's really up to we don't dictate as engineers and people that bid projects, we don't dictate the schedule or the means and methods. We specify that the project starts when we issue notice to proceed, and the completion date is this, and your schedule and restoration plan needs to meet that schedule. So you need to be done by this time, with the majority of the work happening this fall because of the timeframes around tree removals, and making sure that we're not disrupting northern long-eared bat. And there's things that become involved with, they need to get this portion of the project wrapped up with the tree removals in a certain specified window. So that's all in the contract documents. Yep. And then just maybe I want to touch base on road closures and stuff like that, given that this is a pretty heavy area for school traffic. The intention is to designate the area south, or not south, it would be west of East River Road, the grass area between the trees and the trail as a staging area, and also the across College Drive and Kiwanis Park, that parking lot, we were hoping to use as a staging area. We're going to include a traffic control plan in the final drawings that have all the road work ahead, signage on College Drive, and then we're going to have the contractor come up with a traffic maintenance plan that basically says if they're traversing across College Drive to grab materials or whatever that is, that they have flaggers or whatever's necessary to get their construction traffic across College over to that staging area. So we're utilizing our traffic management staff that do traffic control for road projects to create a traffic control plan to maintain the roads open during this project, but also making sure the contractor is crossing their T's and dotting their I's as far as keeping the traveling public safe that's using College Drive for their commute.
And to expand on using that Kiwanis area, like Paul mentioned, the intention is a lot of the work would occur hopefully in the wintertime or early spring, probably when the park is lightly used. So utilizing some of that parking shouldn't be too much of an effect on the park.
Yep. I think that's all I really had, unless there's or anything else that you guys have. If there isn't, we're going to keep plugging forward to 90 and 100% plans and continue working with Jesse on the permits and reviewing the plans and things as we go, and making sure we're all in concurrence with stuff as we move forward. So,
Compared to Lyman P. White, is there more or less kind of supervision and testing that WSB has to do?
this will be less because there's not structural materials being used. There are a lot of flora and fauna. Now we want to make sure that their work in the river is being protected we have a SWIP plan, and so erosion controls and things are in place, and that the contractor is placing items such as the log root wads to help direct the flow back out in the river, the riprap and things, making sure those are the plans. So we will have an inspector on site probably multiple times a week. And we'll also be coordinating quite frequently with city staff when we start looking at view shed areas and planting trees and that kind of stuff to make sure we're all on the same page as far as where they're going, where the view sheds are and things. So I would say from a overall construction management perspective, there's less. It's just different staff too than you would see on a civil construction project. These are our natural resources staff that are out, and they know trees, they know seed species, they know environmental requirements, regulations, and things. So,
Cool, thanks.
yep. Anything else, Jesse, that I missed? No, I sent him the invite, but yep. I think we covered everything that we wanted to cover, and as long as we get the kind of the tree lists from city staff, we'll be in good shape.
Cool. I think our October meeting's like the 24th, so that timing works out well. With
Yeah,
bids.
yep. And the original schedule has changed a little bit. Some dates pushed up and back and things, but with the inevitable goal of getting things awarded in that October meeting was kind of always the plan. So,
Excellent.
yep.
Cool. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, and of course, if you guys have any questions, either reach out to Jesse or he can forward anything on to me, and we can get it to the right person to answer. So it's probably the last time you'll see me until that October meeting. So, okay.
Excellent. Let's see what's next. Anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second that?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.